Most performance content is a list of things to add. We call this in our circle the shit backpack. New habits, new routine, new frameworks, new ways to think about your potential. But I want to do something different today. I want to design failure. If you like this angle, we may do this as a series, so don't hesitate to smash the subscribe button so that you don't miss the next parts. All right, so to design failure, specifically, I want to build the worst performer imaginable. Because when you get specific about what failure looks like, really specific, something interesting happens. The antithesis naturally reveals itself. And not just intellectually, because you'll feel it, your body knows which of the following tenets of failure it's running the most. That's the somatic truth underneath all of this. The body is already running the program. The question is whether you're running it consciously or you're letting it run you. Now, before we go any further, if what I'm talking about today already perks your attention and you want it to be understood personally, not just conceptually, these patterns are wired into your nervous system. And so now as an adult, I still operate this way, and it's what went into the design of the Prestige. Now, being in a room with people who are objectively better than you, this has nothing to do with your worth as a human. This is the open, coachable willingness to say, I'm pretty great, but you're also pretty great, and you can do this thing, or you have greater experience in this thing, and I want to be able to do that. Can you teach me? All right, so that's fault number 2. Do not spend time with people who are better than you. Failure, tenet number 3, disappear and commit to the grind. This one is interesting because it's the lone wolf philosophy and it's gaining cult-like popularity. There's been a few outliers that have mastered this. I'm looking at you, David Goggins. And it's cool in concept, but it's almost entirely misapplied. The spirit of it, remove distractions, prioritize yourself, do the work. That's correct. Where it misleads is in the insinuation that you can or you should be doing it alone. There is no gold star for suffering in isolation. In fact, it's a trait of low performance. Swift, objective feedback is the hallmark of rapid progress. So a mentor who identifies a false assumption or holds up a tough mirror of truth or a strategic error, well, that can save you years of grinding away in the dark, and it can solve it in minutes. That is leverage. I've worked networking magic in small circles for a long time, and I've learned that it's more like cultivation and gardening than not. So here's the other cost, the relational cost. If you disappear and you go dark and you work in silence, and then you come back, it's like you forgot to water your trees and your flowers for months, and then you wonder why they're crispy. That's the relational cost to the disappearance act. The people that you leave behind when you disappear. And they might be people that you really respected and that would have fell in the previous category. People who have access to resources, connections, ideas, knowledge that you could have actually benefited from. But now you disappeared, you came back, they don't know you, and they don't owe you the new version of you anything. Making concerted efforts to stay connected, the courtesy of closing loops or responding, that is more important now in our loneliness epidemic than ever before. You don't get to drop the courtesy and then expect that the world cares about you and who you've become when you come back. And if they do, that's graciousness on their part, not the expectation and norm. I had this amazing client that I worked with, and she was actually extremely social. She just had the magic sauce, But she would do this. It was like out of sight, out of mind with people. She would do a giant lift, like feel all of the energy of reaching out and growing and going big. And she would do like 100 reach outs. It was amazing, right? No shade. But then, her nervous system, like her body wasn't conditioned for that amount of connection and exposure. And so she'd pull all the way back and she'd go super dark and she would barely respond to any of those people. And so watch what that pattern is teaching, right? It's teaching big starts and then no continuum. That's the nervous system pattern underneath. And so it always felt like to her that her business would need to like start again. It was a big lift. And every 6 months or so, she was starting from scratch and it was getting exhausting. Plus, she had burned a lot of really fantastic contacts because they didn't trust that she would ever get back with them again. You see? That's the fallout of this particular one. So then rather than feed momentum, it was teaching a big stop and start pattern. And look, I alluded to this a bit, but I can be the worst at this from time to time. I've got my own loner, sometimes intensely focused tendencies, but I don't use it as an excuse. And I invite you into that mindset too. I work extra intentionally to stay connected. As I said, I move in small circles, much of which are behind the scenes with leaders and power players in their domain. And so I work intentionally to invest in those relationships and to stay connected in an authentic, non-transactional way and to engage as a counterbalance to my known tendencies. So when it comes to my own growth, this has been a rapid advantage, a la Vanka, if you will, leverage, like in jiu-jitsu. Because me and me is just me. But me and we, especially intentionally chosen we, is better. Life is richer, evolution is faster. All right, you get the point. Failure, tenet number 4, don't put yourself first. This might seem paradoxical to the one I just said, but go with me. The first thing that they teach lifeguards, be wary of a thrashing, drowning victim. The risk is that they'll climb you and you'll both go under. If they can't get themselves under control, they have to be rendered unconscious before you can save them. Otherwise, you'll have 2 bodies. So, put your air mask on first. You know this. You're smart. This isn't selfishness. It is the structural requirement of being useful to anyone else. The greatest non-violent activists of our era, Gandhi, King, they were exceedingly disciplined, devout individuals. Hours daily in study, introspection, self-care. That depth showed. And they were warriors for a cause, so they were accessed by many. Very few causes need people who can't show up for themselves. Because when things get hard, if they can't show up for themselves, they won't show up for others either. People have an innate sense of who they can count on in a real pinch, and that sense is usually right. So it's worth reflecting what putting yourself first looks like as a mind-body somatic practice. Not as a mindset reframe, but something that is felt and enacted in your body as a ritual. Where do you see this? Where do you have resistance to this most? Now, putting yourself first, this is also even why in initial conversations with people interested in joining us in the Prestige, I listen for and I filter for agency and initiative. If I have to repeatedly remind people of meetings, handle objections, or hold them accountable again and again to the same things that they say matters, well, let me put it this way. If I have to drag them across the starting line, I'll have to carry them through the race. And the worst thing that you can do for someone is that which they ought to be doing for themselves. Not just your mindset, not just your behavior. And that's exactly what we map in our Somatic Skins diagnostic tool. It's called the Somatic Skins Quiz. It's down in the description below, and it's pretty damn cool. So you can take that if you'd like, pause the video, come back, and you'll have that in hand. All right, now let's build the worst version of you, shall we? Charlie Munger, right hand to the investor Warren Buffett, used inversion as a standard filter. In his world, you ask how to blow up your investment portfolio, and then what you get is a precise map of what not to do. So I'm going to do the same thing in the mind-body domain. What I want to give you today is not another list of things to pursue. It's a list of things to stop, or at a minimum, to see clearly. Because here's what I know after working for 13 plus years with high-performing clients. It isn't enough to orient around and pursue beneficial things. You must also stop doing the stupid things that negate and derail your progress. And the stupid things, they're often easier to identify than the optimal path. So eliminating the drag gets you 85% of the way there without a single new protocol. That's cool. So the two together, constructive habits, and then the absence of stupid mistakes, that's what moves someone from good to great. And in every high performer that I've ever worked with, these are not ideas. They are active practices to come back to again and again and again. And they're largely automated. So without further ado, I give you how to fail, step 1. I used to do this thing when meeting with a possible client where I'd ask them, if we had your husband, your wife, your partner in the same room here, and they were 100% honest, and I asked them, if so-and-so didn't succeed at accomplishing X, what would be the reason, in your opinion, that they would fail? What would be the way that they stopped themselves? And almost always, there was immediate clarity about what they tended to do, and then what they needed to stop doing so they could succeed. So failure tenet number 1 is don't set goals. Vision boards, feelings, manifesting, tossing up fate to the heavens. Well, these things work for a select few, but anything works for a select few, and that's the problem. The version of you that doesn't want to feel constrained by deadlines or a pressure to achieve. Does that version stand a greater or lesser chance than the version who puts pen to paper, defines targets within a timeline, breaks the plan down into weekly or daily actions, and then tracks and refines deliverables over time? When the pressure to change sits beneath the threshold necessary to move the needle, change doesn't happen at all. It doesn't matter how long you commit, how long you've been trying. It matters how acute the stressor. So you can wait for life to bring you those stressors, or you can design them yourself within the constraints of goals and objectives. This is a biological principle of adaptation. So your body, it doesn't change in comfort. It changes under load. And that applies equally to upward mobility in every domain of life. If you are not generatively building, you are in a state of atrophy. There's no way around it. And there is a difference, by the way, between head goals and felt goals. This is something we filter for all the time in our World of the Prestige, our Somatic Academy, because it's really easy to have a list of shoulds. I should do this. I should be doing this. I should be doing this better. I should accomplish this within 6 months. This should be my new reality. And it's interesting, but people go above the head. You can watch their eyes drift. You can watch their voice change or listen to their voice change. And you can just tell this is a head goal. This is not meaningful to them. When it's a felt goal, it's clear. There's a sense of groundedness about it, a sense of meaning, and they can articulate it. So there's your extra bonus sauce. So Failure tenet number 1, don't set goals. Failure tenet number 2, do not spend time with people more capable than you. You've heard the old adage, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This may be one of the most common of common knowledge and the least implemented. For good reason. It's not easy to look at your environment and acknowledge that it's working against you. There are 2 angles here. The first is whether the people around you assist your life pursuits. That might look like friends who hold you to your word, not the comfortable kind of support, but the confronting kind, or those with connections, resources, or knowledge that you don't have yet. The second is harder to sit with, the opportunity cost of spending your time with people who are working hard to stay in the same place. Think about that. Your time, your attention, your energy, your nervous system bandwidth. That's what's being allocated when you're in the rooms with people who are working hard to stay in the same place. If it's 1 night a month, maybe that's the trade. If it's 2 nights a week, might deserve some honest reflection. We live in an era where you can find a mentor, a community, a peer group operating at the level or just above the level that you want to reach. You can get it from the device in your hand. That didn't exist 20 years ago. And so there's no excuse left for staying in the room that you've outgrown. I came across this principle by accident a long time ago. So I just happened to be one of the youngest and least experienced musicians in the classical music circle that I was training in. And I just remember the feeling of completely feeling insecure, being in the room with high schoolers and college age and grad when I was 10, 11, and really self-conscious. And it was humiliating. I had plenty of things where I just wanted to sink through the floor. But upon reflection later in adulthood, I'm really grateful. Now, I honestly don't know why it worked out that way. I don't think I was particularly talented. I think it was just how it was in that particular time auditioning for the teacher I studied with. But it taught me something. It taught me that it's important to be in growth circles with people who are better than you. That because it shows you the bar that you can achieve. And it taught me how to be inspired by people. And it taught me how to compete and be competitive in a way that wasn't derogatory, you know? Okay, failure tenet number 5. Don't learn from your mistakes. Absolutely don't learn from mistakes. Take negative feedback as an absolute character judgment. Be insulted and ruffled by everything, especially when it's true. Decide that that thing isn't for you. You're no longer aligned with it, and go try something else. I take this as I'm going to take my toys and go home tendency that we all have, or I didn't want to do that anyways. I don't need them anyways. And so much of the time, this is because you got feedback. You got feedback either directly from a mentor or a teacher. You got peer feedback. This is also why we design our events, to be catalysts for this sort of feedback. And instead of taking it and running with it, which is where I'm going to go next, you take it as a character judgment. You get offended and you want to push away and pull back. Go do something else. Or you can recognize that feedback is data. That the contraction that you felt when you receive it, the tightening, the ruffling, the urge to explain or deflect, that's a response, not a verdict. Your body knows the difference between a real threat and a wounded ego, but it is nuanced and it's not always obvious at first unless you're really looking for it. So learning how to tell the difference between a true, real threat or a true toxic environment, rather than one that ruffled you, that gave you feedback, that told you something that was hard to hear, learning to tell those apart is a lot of the work. When I meet with someone interested in joining the Prestige, I tell them point blank, if you are easily offended, this is not the place for you. And that's not because we're rude or we're disrespectful or we're shaming in our approach. Quite the opposite, actually. But we do give feedback, and we do hold up mirrors for those who work with us. And that is out of respect for them and their investment. They aren't here because they need a new BFF. They're here to grow, and that's the difference. I can remember one such instance for myself. I intentionally have found mentors that I know will tell me the truth no matter what and push my edges. That's a point of value for me. And so I remember one such, and it was a mentor I was apprenticing with to learn luxury sales and leadership negotiation. He had worked in the sector as the right-hand mentor of many executives and CEOs. And so I wanted to learn leadership language from him. And I remember one of our first meetings, and he believed in demonstration over dialogue. And he said, well, show me. Show me how you would negotiate. Show me how you would lead this meeting. And I began. And he started pushing me on pacing or, sitting cross-armed back and all of the things. And about 10 minutes in, he interrupted. And he said, I'm so sorry. I'm not intending to be rude, but I would absolutely laugh you out of the room. Now, that may not be socially a very nice thing to say, but I loved hearing it because it's exactly why I was there. Even though it hurt, it stung. Nobody wants to be told that, especially not a woman. I could see, yep, this is exactly why I'm here. And he said, and that's okay. You haven't learned the ropes of leadership and presence at this level, but I can teach you, and that's why you're here. So I could recenter, I could realign that I was there to grow, not to be validated. And that's an important distinction. It's the willingness to see that if you put yourself in that category, right, to see that your worth, your sense of self, it wasn't on the table. It never was. But your progress and your tendencies and how we get in our own way and the skills that needed to be strengthened were. And that person, the person willing to give you that kind of feedback, that is high value. That is the most value because they're able to do what other people were unwilling, to be totally and completely honest in their domain. That's also what separates out therapy from coaching. The realization that I'm not there to be validated and understood as much as I am to be challenged and to grow. Very different paradigm. All right, so there you have it. The 5 tenets of failure to master, if your goal is how to fail. But here's what I want you to notice before you move on. Somewhere in this list, you felt something. You might have even smirked. It was a recognition. That is not incidental. That's your body marking its territory, plotting the path of your potential growth, if you will. And I want you to know those tendencies are not a disconnected behavior. They're not even a deep-seated identity issue. They are a somatic pattern. They're embedded. And rapidly and deeply shifting somatic patterns is what we do best. It's what the Prestige is built for. It's our high-touch somatic academy, part underworld, part mastermind for skilled practitioners and highly capable leaders hell-bent on tapping their next edge of potential. If that's you, and you'd like to be in an environment that brings out your best mind, your best body, your best business and impact, the link is in the description for us to connect. Applications are open for our next season now. If this video landed for you, do like like it, subscribe it, share in the comments what's landing for you. And then I'll stay tuned for part 2. See you then.